This executive order charges your Secretary of Commerce with starting the process to potentially impose tariffs or other trade barriers to prevent this ongoing dumping of copper and to protect the American manufacture and production of copper.
It will have a big impact. Howard, do you want to say something about that?
You mind if I read one of
Yeah,
the truths? So this is a truth that's about to go out. Like our steel and aluminum industries, our great American copper industry has been decimated by global actors attacking our domestic production. To build back our copper industry, I've requested my Secretary of Commerce and USTR to study copper imports and end unfair trade putting Americans out of work. Tariffs will help rebuild back our American copper industry and strengthen our national defense. American industries depend on copper, and they should be made in America. No exemptions, no exceptions. America first creates American jobs and protects our national security. It's time for copper to come home. If it's all right with you, if I can talk a little bit about the digital services tax, would that be all right?
Go ahead, do that.
So I read another truth. This is sort of so fun to read his words. Can't be any better. So our incredible United States economy and undeniable American spirit has enabled the creation of the greatest technology companies on earth. Our digital economy is bigger than most of the world's countries, and the market cap of even one of our companies exceeds every European country. Instead of empowering their workers and creating opportunities, foreign governments have instead tried to tax, fine, and hinder Americans' technology companies. Both friend and foe have been treating American tech companies harshly as if our companies are their piggy bank. This will now end. It is my objective to level the playing field and end these attacks. We are putting these countries on notice to end their unfair treatment of American companies, large and small. Our companies are the greatest investors in the world. So our tech companies are the greatest investors in the world, and their investments will go only to where American companies are treated fairly. Our ingenuity, grit, drive, and perseverance have built America. If these countries want to participate in the AI industrial revolution, it's time to choose sides with America, not against us. And we signed that on Friday, sir.
Okay, very big deal, right?
Huge.
Thank you. All right, and that's a very big one that Howard just read, but they're both big. They're all big. We're only doing big ones. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank Apple, though, for announcing they're going to invest $500 billion in our country. That's the biggest investment anybody's probably made to this date. And they're going to do it very quickly, and that's because of tariffs. They don't want to pay the tariffs, and they feel very strongly about the country. Now, they wouldn't have done it without us. Without the Trump administration, they wouldn't have done it. But they feel very strongly about the direction of the country. The polls have shown that, too. The polls are coming out showing direction of the companies, of the country is the best they've ever seen, actually. Best they've ever seen. So I just want to thank Tim Cook and Apple for the confidence. $500 billion. That's the biggest investment anyone has made in a short period of time.
Is it true that President Zelenskyy is coming on Friday to meet with you, and is the mineral deal sorted out?
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, you know, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy, and it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal, it could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting a war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. People say, how do we know that? It didn't happen for 4 years. Would have never happened. And nevertheless, this guy went into this situation and he spent money like nobody's ever seen. $350 billion. The other thing that we don't like is that Europe has spent $100 billion. We've spent $350 billion. Europe gets their money back because they spent it in the form of a loan, and we just gave them, whether it's 300 or 350 billion, nobody really knows. They can't even tell me the answer to that, but it means probably more than that. So what we're doing is now we're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem, a problem like very few people have had. Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. So we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
With Ukraine and this mineral deal, what does Ukraine get in return, Mr. President?
$350 billion and lots of equipment and military equipment and the right to fight on and originally the right to fight. Look, Ukraine, I will say they're very brave and they're good soldiers, but without the United States and its money and its military equipment, this war would have been over in a very short period of time. In fact, I was the one that gave the javelins. You remember the famous javelins? That was me. That wasn't Obama. It wasn't Biden. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And they wiped out a lot of tanks with those javelins. And the expression was that Obama gave sheets and I gave the javelins. That was a big deal at the time. It wiped out. That was the beginning when people said, wow, that's something. Well, that was American equipment. Without American equipment, this war would have been over very quickly. And American money, too. I mean, a lot of money. On the deal. That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2015.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire, all of them told me that he will never go. We signed with him with gas contract, yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr.
are
President,
not
Mr.
strong-
President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for
Have you
trying to
ever
bring
been-
it into this
Have you
conflict.
ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's
I will
respectful
answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of
will
the United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You
Don't-
will not
you
have
gotta-
a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this.
you're
doing. I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and
of
he
the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not in a
Mr.
good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't
was
have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
playing
But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What you're-
III.
what you're
You're
speaking
gambling
about?
with
What you're
World
speaking
War
about?
III. And
Yeah.
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country,
I'm
that's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the
What-
United
what
States
you're
of America
speaking about.
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country's
Can I-
in big
can I-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank-
president, $350 billion.
You voted
We gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and your
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if,
West
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
that
thank
there,
you
except
to
that-
American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're
I
saying
said-
you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
that
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
Today's meeting in the White House did not turn out how many had expected. The tense 10-minute exchange between Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy went well beyond the usual diplomatic rifts. The gulf between the two leaders seemingly widening right in front of the cameras. It began like most other visits by heads of state to the White House, with a civil greeting, a handshake, a quick photo op. But it wasn't long before the meeting between President Donald Trump and President Volodymyr Zelenskyy devolved into a shouting match in the Oval Office.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
I'm not
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
President Trump berating Ukraine's leader, and Vice President J.D. Vance questioning whether Zelenskyy had demonstrated enough gratitude for U.S. support.
You're gambling with World War III.
what do you think
You're
about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting, have
today,
you said thank
even-
you?
Zelenskyy was in Washington to sign a deal which would have given the U.S. access to some of Ukraine's rare earth minerals in exchange for continued support in its war with Russia. The Ukrainian president has made it clear a larger peace deal would need to include security guarantees to prevent future Russian invasions. But the meeting showcased an almost real-time breakdown in relations between Washington and Kyiv. This photo of the Ukrainian ambassador head in hands, a sign of just how contentious things got. A short time later, President Trump told Zelenskyy to leave the White House. No mineral deal was signed and a planned news conference canceled. In a social media post following that Oval Office exchange, Mr. Trump wrote, he disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he's ready for peace. Now, Zelenskyy also took to social media but did not reference that heated exchange. Instead, he thanked America and Americans for their support and reiterated his desire for a just and lasting peace. But the acrimony that exploded in the Oval Office today certainly raises questions about the prospects of a peaceful solution here.
This gentleman is a very unique man. This, I think I could say in the world of chips, certainly, but in the world pretty much of business, nobody's done what he's done. For those of you that are into that world, you would say, wow, he's a legend, but he is a legend, and it's an honor to be with you. Very great honor. Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Welcoming from TSMC, which is the biggest there is at a level that you can't even calculate, frankly. C.C. Way to the White House for a very historic announcement. This is a tremendous thing for our country and hopefully for his company. We're also pleased to be joined by Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and White House AI and CIP, the crypto czar David Sachs, another two very highly respected people. It's great to have you guys involved. And David, thank you very much for coming on. David is sort of the king of intellect in that world. We have some good people. Today, Taiwan Semiconductor is announcing that they will be investing at least $100 billion in new capital in the United States over the next short period of time to build state-of-the-art semiconductor manufacturing facilities. I think mostly it's going to be in Arizona, which is what I understand, which is a great state. I like it because I won it. But I won most of them, actually. But we won it, and we won it big. The most powerful AI chips in the world will be made right here in America, and it'll be a big percentage of the chips made by his company. But as you know, they're based mostly in Taiwan, and they're far and away the biggest. There's nobody even close. This $100 billion in new investment will go into building 5 cutting-edge fabrication facilities in the great state that we just discussed, Arizona, and will create thousands of jobs, many thousands of jobs, and they're high-paying jobs. In total, today's announcement brings Taiwan Semiconductor investments to about $165 billion they've started already. Among the largest new foreign direct investments in the United States, Apple, as you know, I made a big announcement last week of $500 billion, and we have some others that have announced. We have many that want to announce, but I don't have time to do all of these announcements, I tell you. But for you, I'm doing the announcement.
Thank you.
This will create hundreds of billions of dollars in economic activity and boost America's dominance in artificial intelligence and beyond. Semiconductors are the backbone of the 21st century economy, and really, without the semiconductors, there is no economy. Powering everything from AI to automobiles to advanced manufacturing. And we must be able to build the chips and semiconductors that we need right here in American factories with American skill and American labor. And that's exactly what we're doing. As you know, Taiwan pretty much has a monopoly on that market. And I think pretty much is not a term that's even appropriate. They do have a monopoly. And this is a tremendous move by the most powerful company in the world.
We did want to get reaction here in South Florida after President Donald Trump signed an executive order making English the official language of the United States. It's the first time in our country's nearly 250-year history such a move has been made. We spoke with a man in Domino Park on the change.
I think that can push people to try to learn. For example, Miami. We have many opportunities here to learn English. If you're an immigrant, you are supposed to learn the language of the country. For example, in my country, Cuba, there were many immigrants from different countries, including Arabs, and they all learned Spanish.
Now, with the new order, government agencies have the power to choose whether to provide services in languages other than English.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelenskyy, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great. From his standpoint, I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up as strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace.
Welcome back to Special Report. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Mr. President, thank you for the time today, especially on this day, to continue to do this interview. President Trump said after your meeting that you disrespected him and the Vice President and all of America in the Oval Office. Do you think you did, and do you think you owe an apology to President Trump?
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the invitation for this dialogue, and good evening to all your country, to all Americans. I'm very thankful to Americans for all your support. You did a lot. I'm thankful to President Trump and to Congress bipartisan support. And I was always very thankful from all our people. You helped us a lot from the very beginning during 3 years of full-scale innovation. You helped us to survive. Anyway, we are strategic partners, and even in such tough dialogue, and I think we have to be very honest and we have to be very direct to understand each other, because it's very, for us, very necessary to President Trump, and I'm with all respect that he wants to finish this war, but nobody wants to finish more than we, because we in Ukraine, we are in this war, we are in this battle, and battle for freedom for our lives. So I'm just telling that I think that we have to be on the same side, and I hope that the president on our side together with us, and that is very important to stop Putin. And I heard from President Trump a lot of times that he will stop the war, and I hope he will, and we need to pressure him with Europe, with all the partners. And I think this dialogue had to be a little bit earlier to understand where we are. Like, you know, I don't remember exactly, but like President Reagan said, that peace is not just an absent the war. Yes, we are speaking about just and lasting peace, about freedom, about justice, about human rights. And that's why I said that I think so, that ceasefire, and you know Putin, he broken 25 times ceasefire during all these years, 10 years.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect the president and I respect American people. And if, I don't know if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing.
And my source tonight is the Secretary of State who is in that room today, Marco Rubio. Thank you so much, Secretary Rubio, for being here. We just heard from President Zelenskyy. He said he does not think that he owes President Trump an apology for what happened inside the Oval Office today. Do you feel otherwise?
I do, because you guys don't see. You guys only saw the end. You saw what happened today. You don't see all the things that led up to this. So let me explain. The president's been very clear. He campaigned on this. He thinks this war should have never started. He believes, and I agree, that had he been president, it never would have happened. Now here we are. He's trying to bring an end to this conflict. We've explained very clearly what our plan is here, which is we want to get the Russians to a negotiating table. We want to explore whether peace is possible. They understand this. They also understand that this agreement that was supposed to be signed today was supposed to be an agreement that binds America economically to Ukraine, which to me, as I've explained, and I think the president alluded to today, is a security guarantee in its own way, because we're involved. It's now us. It's our interests. That was all explained. That was all understood. And nonetheless, for the last 10 days, in every engagement we've had with the Ukrainians, there's been complications in getting that point across, including the public statements that President Zelenskyy has made. But they insisted on coming to D.C. This agreement could have been signed 5 days ago, but they insisted on coming to Washington. And there was and should have been a very clear understanding. Don't come here and create a such scenario where you're going to start lecturing us about how diplomacy isn't going to work. President Zelenskyy took it in that direction, and it ended in a predictable outcome as a result. It's unfortunate. That wasn't supposed to be this way, but that's the path he chose. And I think, frankly, sends his country backwards in regards to achieving peace, which is what President Trump wants at the end of the day, is for this war to end. He's been as consistent as anyone can be about what his objective is here.
But what specifically do you want to see President Zelenskyy apologize for?
Well, apologize for turning this thing into the fiasco for him that it became. There was no need for him to go in there and become antagonistic. Look, this thing went off the rails. You were there, I believe. It went off the rails when he said, let me ask you a question to the vice president. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Well, this is a serious thing. I mean, thousands of people have been killed, thousands. And he talks about all these horrible things that have happened to prisoners of war and children, all true, all bad. This is what we're dealing with here. It needs to come to an end. We are trying to bring it to an end. The way you bring it to an end is you get Russia to the table to talk. And he understands that attacking Putin, no matter how anyone may feel about him personally, forcing the president into a position where you're trying to goad him into attacking Putin, calling him names, maximalist demands about Russia having to pay for the reconstruction, all the sorts of things that you talk about in a negotiation. Well, when you start talking about that aggressively, and the president's a deal maker, he's made deals his entire life, you're not going to get people to the table. And so you start to perceive that maybe Zelenskyy doesn't want a peace deal. He says he does, but maybe he doesn't. And that active, open undermining of efforts to bring about peace is deeply frustrating for everyone who's been involved in communications with them leading up to today. And I think he should apologize for wasting our time for a meeting that was going to end the way it did.
You yourself have said previously that Putin cannot be trusted in negotiations. That was the point that President Zelenskyy was ultimately making during that conversation, is that there cannot be an agreement without security guarantees, because he was talking about all the ceasefire agreements before, or agreements that Putin has just blown past. I mean, do you still feel that way, that Putin cannot be trusted in these negotiations?
Well, I was there yesterday when the president said in front of the media that our approach is going to be trust but verify. President Trump's made deals his entire life. He's not going to get suckered into some deal that's not a real deal. We all understand this. We understand it on our end for certain. And so the goal here is to get to a place we have to explore whether peace is possible. I've said this repeatedly. I don't know. I think it is, based on what they've said so far, but we have to explore that. How else is this war going to end? I ask people, what is the European plan to end this war? I can tell you what one foreign minister told me, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I can tell you what one of them told me, and that is that the war goes on for another year, and at that point, Russia will feel so weakened that they'll beg for a peace. That's another year of killing, another year of dying, another year of destruction, and by the way, not a very realistic plan in my point of view. So if there's a chance at peace, even if it's a 1% chance, that needs to be explored, and that's what President Trump is trying to do here.
And that meeting generating strong reactions from the Ukrainian community here in Northeast Ohio. For more on that, we go now to News 5's Remy Murray in Parma.
As you're driving on State Road in Parma, you'll notice a portion of the community is painted in blue and yellow like this fire hydrant to stand in unity with Ukraine, which one local leader says is once again needed following Friday's development.
This is not a game. This is not a gamble. This is people. This is sovereignty.
As day turns to dusk, you can see the fabric of this community blended together through the foundation of St. Josephat Ukrainian Catholic Cathedral and then an American flag drifting in the wind.
This is my home country now because I've been here for 35 years.
But now Roman Skalski says he feels torn on what he is calling a somber evening.
It's personal for me. It's personal for a lot of people in Parma, in Cleveland area. We have a lot of refugees that are worried what's going to happen to them.
Others, like Diana Alexandra Gabyak, says she's encouraging Ukrainian Americans to trust the process.
It is crucial that we all remain calm about this whole situation.
While watching Friday's discussion between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Gabyak says she understands why it became tense and says she doesn't blame either side for their reaction.
As American people, we haven't seen that accountability and clarity in the past years. But in that same way, we can understand Ukrainian people and Ukrainian president.
While a deal was not reached to bring the war between Russia and Ukraine to an end, and the U.S. to then receive a share of Ukraine's mineral resources, Skalski says he stands behind Zelensky's request of security guarantees to prevent Russia's aggression.
I am completely with him. And of course, Trump, President, I respect. We're praying for him. We want him to understand you cannot play with evil.
Joining me now in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the nation's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. Secretary, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, Maria.
Well, Secretary, you were sitting across from the president on Friday. Before we get to tariffs, I want to get your reaction to what went down. How was it in the room? And do you believe Democrats were egging on Zelenskyy to not say thank you, to stay tough and not sign that rare earth minerals deal?
No, so we were 40 minutes before the cameras came in and 45 minutes before the meltdown. And the fact was Zelenskyy never stopped asking for, I will give no concessions. They've got to leave my land. I want reparations of $300 billion. And I want the United States to give me security guarantees while they're at war with Russia. And that's why the president called it World War III. You're gambling with World War III. We're not going to give you security guarantees while you're at war with Russia. It's just ridiculous. His requests were ridiculous. They were not reasonable. The president let it go for a while, he was there to make peace. Our president is there to make peace. As he said, end the death. And Zelenskyy was not there to make peace. He was there to strike some sort of make-believe bargain that he had in his mind. And eventually that just ran its course. And Donald Trump said, I can't take this nonsense anymore, and made it crystal clear he's the peacemaker. And if Zelensky's not interested in peace, then he should go home and think about it.
To strengthen our relationship with America, and indispensable partners in defence and security. And it's why this weekend I've been hosting European leaders here in London to work together for the security of the United Kingdom, Ukraine, and Europe as a whole. Through my discussions over recent days, we've agreed that the UK, France, and others will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting. Then we'll discuss that plan with the United States and take it forward together. The purpose of today's meeting was to unite our partners around this effort, to strengthen Ukraine and to support a just and enduring peace for the good of all of us. Our starting point must be to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position now, so that they can negotiate from a position of strength. And we are doubling down in our support. Yesterday evening, the UK signed a £2.2 billion loan to provide more military aid to Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. And today I'm announcing a new deal which allows Ukraine to use £1.6 billion of UK export finance to buy more than 5,000 air defence missiles, which will be made in Belfast, creating jobs in our brilliant defence sector. This will be vital for protecting critical infrastructure now and strengthening Ukraine in securing the peace when it comes. Because we have to learn from the mistakes of the past. We cannot accept a weak deal like Minsk, which Russia can breach with ease. Instead, any deal must be backed by strength. Every nation must contribute to that in the best way that it can, bringing different capabilities and support to the table, but all taking responsibility to act, all stepping up their own share of the burden. So we agreed some important steps today. First, we will keep the military aid flowing and keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine now. Second, we agreed that any lasting peace must ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and Ukraine must be at the table. Third, in the event of a peace deal, we will keep boosting Ukraine's own defensive capabilities to deter any future invasion. Fourth, we will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace. Not every nation will feel able to contribute, but that can't mean that we sit back. Instead, those willing will intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing. We're working with the US on this point after my meeting with President Trump last week. And let me be clear, we agree with the President on the urgent need for a durable peace. Now we need to deliver together. Finally, we agreed that leaders will meet again very soon to keep the pace behind these actions and to keep working towards this shared plan. We are at a crossroads in history today. This is not a moment for more talk. It's time to act, time to step up and lead, and to unite around a new plan for a just and enduring peace.
Now, General, is there a split here between the US and our NATO allies that is actually weakening NATO significantly?
Well, I think what the European allies are doing is two things. One is shoring up the relationship they have with Zelenskyy after the blow-up in the Oval Office that took place at the press briefing. So that's one thing. The second thing is that they're really making certain that they're going to provide increased support to Ukraine in terms of weapons and money, and also a number of the countries are willing to put boots on the ground if there is a peace agreement. And noteworthy and missed by a lot of people, in that press briefing, President Trump, when discussing this issue, and the issue was British and French are willing to put troops in as peacekeepers after we have an agreement, and conceivably we could. If that press briefing hadn't blown up in the dispute that took place, what I just said would have been the headline, because that is different than everything President Trump has said about boots on the ground in Ukraine. And I underscore this. It makes a statement that he tried to tell Zelenskyy, look, I don't want to define what security guarantees are before I negotiate a deal with Putin. I want to put those together after I have an agreement with Putin. But he made that concession at the press briefing that we're all very much familiar with now.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 45. The nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action. The ayes are 56, the nays are 43. The nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Mass confusion continues among federal government employees over an emailed demand from Elon Musk that they explain 5 things they accomplished the previous week. The first deadline was 11:59 p.m. last night, but shortly after the message went out on Saturday, the Office of Personnel Management said replying was voluntary. Federal agencies sent mixed messages. Some urged workers to comply. Others told employees, don't reply to the demand. One agency said, assume that what you write will be read by malign foreign actors. Talk about mixed messages. We also learned today that nearly 24 employees at Musk's Department of Government Efficiency have resigned. Joining us to discuss this and more, Brett Samuels, White House reporter here at The Hill. President Trump was asked about this demand from Musk yesterday. Let's take a listen.
So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, I think it was actually, there was a lot of genius in sending it.
So do semi-fired workers still have to show up at the office?
Yeah, that's a great question. Semi-fired, I guess, is also semi-employed. I do think it gets back to this idea of mixed messages that you're talking about. Obviously, Elon Musk is sort of moving fast to kind of slash the government workforce, slash spending, and in doing so, it's leading to this sort of widespread confusion. Only this time, it's not happening just at a company; it's happening across the federal government and its many agencies, which of course oversee many key services.
And what do we know about these DOGE workers that quit?
Yeah, so these are federal workers, civil workers. So these are not sort of the same employees that Musk has brought on, the sort of muskrats as they've been derogatorily deemed by critics. But essentially, they've resigned. They've said that this is essentially pushing back on what they saw as essentially a push among DOGE to sort of weaken technology within the government, technological services within the government. So a first sort of real glimpse we've seen of resistance from federal employees working directly with DOGE to kind of push back on some of what they're going for.
Trump's executive orders mixed with DOGE's hardline approach might be striking a chord with some voters. There's this new poll from Stagwell Global. It says 69% support the goal of cutting $1 trillion from government expenditures. It's interesting because Trump's approval rating is only 50%. So it seems that cutting the government, at least in theory, is more popular than the people that are doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's sort of this balancing act, I think, that Trump is going to have to strike where, his popularity, as you mentioned, is sort of hovering around 50%. Elon Musk's popularity has sort of taken a bit of a dip in the last couple of weeks as he's been very present. But as you mentioned, some of what they're doing is popular. Of course, the question, I think, long term is people always say they want change, they want to shake things up, they want to cut the deficit. But then if there are practical effects on government services, I think the question will be whether that approval rating holds.
I want to thank my good friend Sean Ryan over in Middle Tennessee, Nashville, Franklin area, and my buddy Legend for bringing this to my attention last year. None of this would have been possible without them. We've been talking about waste, fraud, and abuse lately in the media, in the DOGE committee, with the chair lady standing here beside me, and I don't think there's any better example than funding terrorists, if you can imagine that. These dadgum people can hate us for free, folks, and hope that's not an omen, but I think we're good. I was working on the bill at the end of 2023 that would address these concerns we had with the Afghanistan Central Bank. This got taken to Sean Ryan and Legend, and we figured out that we've got a lot bigger problems on our hand. Sean and Legend brought to our attention that at least $40 million per week, $40 million per week in taxpayer money is ending up in the hands of the Taliban, and then it's later being auctioned off. Cash is flown by charter jets into Afghanistan. It's auctioned off to the Taliban in order to exchange it for the Afghan currency. From there, the Taliban will get it to the NGOs who have to pay taxes on that money. The NGOs have to be approved by the Taliban. And every time the NGOs spend the money, the Taliban will take a cut. When the money is exchanged for the Afghan currency, the Taliban take a cut. The Taliban also determine who can receive foreign aid. Most of the time, these people are either Taliban or Al-Qaeda. These people are the sworn enemies that hate Christians and Jews and treat women like cattle. Why on earth are we allowing U.S. dollars to end up in their hands? Why this hasn't been brought to the floor yet is beyond me, and I hope we get to that. This has been going on since 2021. I raised the issue, as I said, in 2023. Can you imagine what we could have done with $40 million a week since then? People in eastern Tennessee and western Carolina were sleeping in tents after Hurricane Helene until President Trump came on the scene. And we let this money go to terrorists. Think of that. And I'm urging Speaker Johnson to bring this to the floor immediately and for the Senate to do the same.
It's been astonishing to watch. We already knew that there was a tremendous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal government, but to watch over the last few weeks as the extent and egregiousness of it has been revealed. I've said a number of times how aggravating it is that this government is forcing the American people to pay for the demise of their own country. We've seen this a number of times, especially in how foreign aid is treated. And much of this funding, we're realizing now, as Mr. O'Neill has pointed out, we're uncovering is the world's largest money laundering scheme in history. And so I would like to think that if these kind of things were put to a vote, that our friends on the left wouldn't vote to support a pickle maker in the Ukraine or to have transgender operas in other countries or to send people to Paris Fashion Week and the like. I would like to think if that was a vote, that would also get a no vote on the other side of the aisle, that this dollar shouldn't be funding. But you got to wonder about the vitriol you see when these things come uncovered to protect these things. Now, definitely the border trafficking institution that was set up, the complete industry, the censorship apparatus, those are examples where we really saw that these taxpayer dollar funds were going to these NGOs that were purely leftist organizations that were turning out voters and getting all this, basically being a campaign front at taxpayer expense. And so you got to wonder how this is happening, because this is not in the legislation. There's no line item in a legislation that has these sort of things in it. So, Mr. Primack, I'd like to ask you, where are these decisions being made? Who's making the decisions about where these dollars go?
This is a combination of cooperation between the Congress and the White House. I can tell you that during my tenure at USAID, everything that we did had strong bipartisan support. Unfortunately, when President Biden came in...
But it's someone in an agency somewhere, is that right, making the decision? How's that decision made? Who's making that decision? Like, that is before the check goes out, who's pushing the button that says, send this check?
It starts with the administrator, goes down to the bureau level and the office level. But in the end, contract officers have to make sure at the Office of Acquisition Procurement that these are following U.S. laws and the policies of the president.
Contract officers. Now, are these people elected? We hear a lot about elected officials making these, certain decisions.
There's no one at USAID that is elected.
So, yeah, so the people sending the money are not elected officials. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. One of the issues we've had is trying to track this dollars once it goes out to bring accountability to it. And there is no connection that we've been able to find to an employee ID number, for example, connected to where the grant money is going out or the contract money is going out. We're working on legislation to fix that. But one of the things that's really disturbing is the fact that some of the money that's going out doesn't even have a name of where it's going out. You talked about that, Mr. Roman. Could you speak to that for a second? It's to the tune of billions of dollars.
Correct. Miscellaneous foreign awardees. The issue with it is that while the individual grantees have to apply for a vetting process that USAID conducts in terms of a government review, including with counterterrorism databases, there's a self-certification process by their sub-grantees. It's as if though you hire a contractor in your house to redo your living room, and he hires a bunch of robbers to take everything out, and you're left with the spades on the wall rather than having a fully renovated room itself.
And so some of these dollars have been going to support terrorist organizations.
Right. And
taxpayer dollars going to support. Now, what would happen if we found a business that was funneling money to the Taliban?
They would be indicted. They would be charged, go before trial, and go to jail for a 20-year sentence for money laundering or for material support for terrorism.
So this is one of those cases where it's only legal if the government's doing it?
Right. In the opening chairman's remarks, she was saying that this is about fraud, waste, and abuse, and if it was anyone else, it's as if though a private citizen can't do this, but if a U.S. government agency or bureaucrat wants to give money to a terror organization, it's okay.
Today, 21 civil servants that worked with the Department of Government Efficiency stepped down and resigned in protest of Elon Musk's haphazard dismantling of the federal government. Now, here's an important thing to note here, a big caveat. These anonymous employees had actually worked for the US Digital Service, which was an executive branch unit that was then rebranded by Musk and Trump, as the United States DOGE service. And so these federal workers were already there when DOGE was created. They were not hired by Elon Musk. Nonetheless, the group includes engineers, data scientists, and product managers. So in a letter that they wrote to Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, they explained their decision to step down. And I'm curious what you think about how this is all kind of developing.
Yeah, so in the beginning, I thought that these were Elon Musk guys, and then I was like, whoa, Doge guys are quitting, and there must be something crazy going on. So it's not that, but what it is also very revealing because of a couple of things that these guys said, not just a resignation, but their specific reasons. So let's get into that.
So they write to Susie Wiles, Donald Trump's chief of staff. Each of us left senior private sector technology positions to pursue nonpartisan public service. We swore to serve the American people and uphold our oath to the Constitution across presidential administrations. However, it has become clear that we can no longer honor those commitments at the United States DOGE service. On January 21st, we were subjected to 15-minute interviews by individuals wearing White House visitor badges. Several of these interviewers refused to identify themselves, asked questions about political loyalty, attempted to pit colleagues against each other, and demonstrated limited technical ability. This process created significant security risks and was designed to intimidate government employees. On February 14th, 1/3 of our USDS colleagues were indiscriminately terminated by an anonymous email. These highly skilled civil servants were working to modernize Social Security, veteran services, tax filing, healthcare, disaster relief, student aid, and other critical services. So those who remained, about 65 staffers, were then integrated into DOGE's government slashing effort. And honestly, now they've had enough. So they also say, we will not use our skills as technologists to compromise core government systems, jeopardize American sensitive data, or dismantle critical public services. We will not lend our expertise to carry out or legitimize DOGE's actions.
Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has targeted a nonprofit based here in San Antonio, saying its contract for $215 million a year is canceled. News 4 San Antonio I-Team Waste Watch reporter Jay Avila has this story live from the Content Center.
Mandy, in a post on X, DOGE said the Department of Health and Human Services had terminated a contract paying Family Endeavors $18 million a month to operate an empty facility in West Texas. The organization is also known as Endeavors, and you may have seen its administrative headquarters and wellness center on De Zavala Road, where it has a cluster of buildings and storefronts. DOGE focused on an overflow housing facility for migrant families Endeavors operates in Pecos, Texas, which DOGE says has been sitting empty, while Endeavors has been receiving the $18 million per month. Homeland Security reposted DOGE's X post, tagging U.S. Attorney Ed Martin with the words, "Please investigate," to which Martin responded, "Duly noted, we are on it." I went to Endeavor's San Antonio headquarters today to get a comment from the organization. They responded late this afternoon by email. Endeavor's was responsible for maintaining operational readiness at the Pecos shelter, ensuring the ability to scale from cold status, operationally ready but not actively serving children, to full use of 3,000 beds as needed. Decisions regarding facility use and migrant sheltering locations were made by the federal government, not Endeavor's. Any claims of corruption or mismanagement are baseless. DOGE also claims Endeavor's received its HHS contract in 2021 after a former ICE employee and Biden transition team member joined the nonprofit. Endeavor's government disclosure forms show its revenues shot up in 2021 from $50 million to $658 million, reaching a peak of $1.1 billion in 2022. For the News 4 I-Team Waste Watch, I'm Jay Avila.
President Trump's first full month as commander-in-chief is wrapping up, and the president has been moving at breakneck speed with a variety of executive orders and actions. Trump celebrated his accomplishments at CPAC, taking a victory lap, lauding his immigration efforts, and moves to shrink the size of the federal government. To break down how Americans are feeling about all this and more, we're going on the record with Scott Tranter, Director of Data Science at Decision Desk HQ. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. President Trump is capping off February with a 52% approval rating, according to a Harvard CAPS Harris survey. That's good news for Trump, who was hovering in the low 40s this time during his first term. Despite that, another survey by Reuters Ipsos found that just 1 in 3 approve of the job Trump is doing to curb inflation. The economy and cost of living remain top of mind for a majority of Americans. Do you see high prices cutting into Trump's overall approval rating in the coming months?
Yeah, look, if those prices are high, and that was, the economy, inflation was the number one issue that his voters said, and, to be honest, a lot of majority of voters, Republican, Democrat, and Independent, if those prices don't come down, I expect to see it in his approval rating. But what we're seeing right now is he's a little over 30 days into his term. We're clearly in the honeymoon phase. There are other aspects of his policy that voters like, like what he's doing on the border. There's mixed opinions on DOGE, but if by summer we still see some high prices and the economy still struggling for middle and lower class Americans, I could see that his approval rating taking a hit.
Last night, the House passed a framework for Trump's agenda, but it includes some big cuts that would likely affect entitlement programs like Medicaid, which can be an unpopular move. According to a poll from Hart Research, 71% of Trump voters said cutting Medicaid would be unacceptable. About 60% said the same of cuts to food and nutrition programs like SNAP. Republicans are already holding on to a slim majority in the House. How much is this bill going to define the midterm races?
I think it's going to be one of the biggest defining moments if they pass it, and they pass it with some of those cuts that they talk about. I think it's given how last night's vote went, it'll be interesting to see if we actually do get something of that magnitude, where we're cutting the deficit the way some of the deficit hawk wants, but also not cut into Medicaid, which is one of our biggest cost drivers. I think it remains a question whether we're going to see those things, but I think the members know, the president knows, and the voters have made it clear they don't want Medicaid cut. So we'll see what happens when that meets some of the deficit hawks who want to reduce the spending.
Elon Musk blasting Social Security as a broken system that everyone knows won't be there when younger generations retire. Musk says Social Security needs an overhaul, starting with fraud, and the numbers don't lie. $147 million in improper payments just last year. 2 million dead people still listed as alive in the system, and 60 million in payments to accounts linked to the deceased. But the agency isn't off the hook. At least 7,000 employees expected to be let go. Taylor, Elon Musk sounds a lot like you last week talking about Social Security and the Ponzi scheme. Do you care to elaborate?
I know. Well, last week I forgot the company that I was so excited to be in that I was a little nervous to say it out loud. I was like, you guys, I think I'm going to say something controversial. Social Security feels like a Ponzi scheme. And you all looked at me and you're like, that's not controversial. That's normal. Everyone thinks it's a Ponzi scheme. So I'm just glad that I'm in friendly fire, I should say, friendly company here. Look, it is, right? We know the definition from Bernie Madoff of most recent memory of a good Ponzi scheme is when the incoming money stops, the outgoing money runs out. That is effectively Social Security. If you don't have incoming money, you run out. It is not self-supporting via returns, which I would argue it should have been. I have a brilliant idea. Let's kill all of the gender studies in kindergarten. Let's do financial management instead. And then we can opt out if we choose. And I will manage my own money myself because, Jackie, as you and I have discussed, we are better stewards of our money than the government is. Let me opt out. I will pay my own way.
The mayor in Boston, Michelle Wu, she was criticized last year because she suggested giving illegals, even as young as 11 years old, voting rights. Then in December of 2023, she hosted a secret elected of color holiday party, and white officials were not allowed to attend. And she said her city will not cooperate with Donald Trump's mass deportation effort, despite ICE rounding up 4 alleged child rapists and also a suspected member of the MS-13 gang.
Yeah, well, there was this guy that was in a Chick-fil-A, because this could add to a resume, was at a Chick-fil-A, and he was in an active, he was caught trying to stab 2 people. Mayor Wu, then he ended up getting killed by an off-duty cop. Mayor Wu expressed condolences to the attacker. Listen to her.
My condolences and all of our thoughts are with the family of the individual whose life has been lost. And I'm also thinking of all the people who were impacted here today in one of the busier parts of the city with this tragedy.
Dumbass. Dumbass.
That's all, folks.
Defiant immigration activists in Los Angeles are now trying all they can to stop ICE agents. They've been showing up to raids with megaphones and cameras, and now they're trying to dox agents across the Los Angeles area. These posters that you're looking at on your screen right now have been spotted in several neighborhoods. Now, they contain photos, names, and phone numbers of ICE agents, along with a message written in Spanish, which reads, "Careful with these faces." Now, a DHS spokesperson is telling Fox, quote, "These pathetic activists are putting targets on the backs of our law enforcement as they shield MS-13, Tren de Aragua, and other vicious gangs that traffic women and children, kidnap for ransom, and poison Americans with lethal drugs. These individuals will be held accountable for obstructing the law and justice." This shouldn't be controversial. Haley, an apt statement. It absolutely should not be controversial at all.
It shouldn't be. And where's Hakeem Jeffries? We just did a segment on him talking about traumatized federal workers because they got an email. What about these traumatized federal workers? You know who's traumatized? Any immigration official in this country. And it's not just what's happening here, these pictures. It's 2018 when AOC ran on abolishing ICE and said that these migrant detention facilities are concentration camps. Those were her words. You know what happened to Border Patrol? The whipping incident where Joe Biden said, "You will pay." These people were strapping migrants. It's outrageous. And then a 511-page report comes out and, oh, wait, they never did that, but the president demonized them. That's Border Patrol. And then you get to this. You think they feel safe? You think their wives feel safe? You think their children feel safe? Their pictures up? These are the traumatized federal workers. These guys deserve raises for protecting us.
Another ICE operation has been leaked, this time in Northern Virginia, where agents plan to raid today and tomorrow. After details were posted by a reporter, a migrant activist group then told illegal migrants
what to do and what not to do when they meet ICE agents. That includes do not open the door without a warrant signed by a judge, do not sign anything, do not show ID from a foreign country. Jonathan Fahey is a former DHS Deputy Assistant Secretary and former Director of ICE, and he joins me now. Jonathan, good morning to you. So DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said that in the past, leakers have already been found and they have been fired. But this keeps on happening. Who's doing the tipping off, and what can the government do to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, I don't know who's doing the tipping off. What's interesting, though, a lot of times these big operations not only involve federal agents, but sometimes they involve state and local officials because you have to involve them, letting them know people are going to be brought into the jail and things like that. But what can be done? These could be, people could be charged with obstruction of justice, which is a federal felony, carries up to 10 years in prison. And it's really justified here because these agents that are going out there on behalf of us to keep us safer are being put in danger because of these leakers trying to advance their political agenda. So this is extraordinarily serious. Nobody has been, hurt or killed at this point because we know, but somebody really bad may have already gotten away and can harm somebody else. So I hope they're taking this as seriously as possible. I'm sure the Department of Justice is investigating these with the appropriate resources with the intention of holding people accountable.
Good morning. My name is Joe McNally. I'm the acting United States Attorney here in Los Angeles. I'm joined by my partners in federal law enforcement from Homeland Security Investigations and the United States Border Patrol, Deputy Special Agent in Charge Dwayne Engelbrecht, and Greg Bavino, Chief of the El Centro Sector of the Border Patrol. I'm here to announce an indictment charging 4 defendants with operating one of the largest human smuggling rings in the nation. The indictment alleges a transnational criminal organization smuggled approximately 20,000 illegal immigrants from Guatemala to the United States via Mexico, and then transported these aliens to cities throughout the United States. The offenses alleged in the indictment show a criminal group that acted with callous disregard for our nation's immigration laws and no regard for the immigrants that they smuggled. They held individuals smuggled hostage for months, threatened them and their family members with violence, and others, including children, were killed in a horrific car crash in Oklahoma in 2023. The indictment charges 4 defendants, all of whom are illegal aliens from Guatemala who committed crimes while living in the United States. Each defendant faces up to life imprisonment and the possibility of the death penalty. Their crimes include conspiring to transport and harbor illegal aliens for private financial gain, which, as I mentioned, at least in one instance, resulted in death. The ringleader, Eduardo Domingo Renojo Mattel, was arrested and arraigned on Friday along with his right-hand man, Mahia Cha. Both defendants have pleaded not guilty, and a trial date is being set. Another defendant, Helmer Obispo Hernandez, is a fugitive. He's pictured here. In addition to the charges of the indictment, he's also charged in a federal criminal complaint with threatening to kill a federal law enforcement officer. While search warrants were being executed in Los Angeles on Friday, he telephoned a member of the investigative team and threatened to kill that agent and his family members by cutting off their heads. Those actions demonstrate just how violent this organization is. A 4th defendant is in custody in Oklahoma in connection with the fatal car accident in 2023. The transnational criminal organization operated for at least a dozen years and specialized in smuggling illegal immigrants from Guatemala to the United States. The movement of those illegal immigrants within the United States, especially between Phoenix and Los Angeles, and the harboring of those illegal aliens in the United States. According to the indictment, associates of the organization in Guatemala solicited thousands of illegal immigrants to come to the United States. Those associates then accepted payment between $15,000 and $18,000 for each smuggled alien to come to the United States via Mexico. They coordinated the movement from Guatemala to the United States. Mexican smuggling organizations transported the illegal immigrants from Mexico into the United States, initially to Arizona. Once the illegal immigrants were in the United States, they held them at stash houses, where they were later picked up by the organization's lieutenants. The illegal immigrants then, for an additional fee, were transported and moved to various stash houses throughout the United States, including Los Angeles. Those who did not pay their fees were held hostage, including at a stash house here in the Westlake district of Los Angeles. This organization caused deaths. In November 2023, while transporting illegal immigrants, defendant Jose Pastor Ola caused a car accident in Elk City, Oklahoma, where he was transporting people illegally. That car accident resulted in 7 deaths. 3 of those individuals are minors, including a 4-year-old child.
This is a Fox News alert. I'm Marianne Rafferty, live in Los Angeles. Legendary actor, 2-time Oscar winner and author Gene Hackman and his wife have died. They were found on Wednesday in their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The Santa Fe sheriff saying there's no immediate indication of foul play, but did not provide a cause of death or when the couple may have died. 95-year-old Hackman has lived in Santa Fe since the 1980s and married his wife, classical pianist Betsy Arakawa, in 1991. Hackman won numerous accolades, including 2 Academy Awards over the course of his long career. Among his many famous roles were Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle in 1971's The French Connection, for which he won Oscar for Best Actor, and Sheriff Little Bill Daggett in the 1992 Clint Eastwood film Unforgiven, for which he won the Best Supporting Actor award. Hackman also played Clyde's brother Buck Barrow in 1967's Bonnie and Clyde, an FBI agent investigating the murder of civil rights activists in Mississippi burning in 1988, and who could forget Lex Luthor in several Superman movies in the 1970s and 80s.
An IRS contractor who leaked President Trump's tax returns also divulged the sensitive information of more than 400,000 taxpayers.
The IRS admitted the scale of the breach to the House Judiciary Committee. It was 6 times bigger than previously thought. The leak also disclosed the tax returns of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and our next guest, who is leading calls for accountability. Joining us now is Florida Senator and Senate Budget Committee member Rick Scott. Senator, I did not know that you were amidst those 400,000. I don't know, maybe you didn't know that until just recently either, because apparently nobody was willing to tell us how many people were in that group. My question to you is, the accountability on this seems almost non-existent. The guy who did it, to me, got a slap on the wrist. And we didn't get the information until just recently. It just has all the hallmarks of government trying to, bury something they don't like, Senator. What do we do about it?
Well, first off, he was doing the Biden administration's job. He was trying to hurt Republicans and hurt Republican donors. He did mine, he did President Trump, he did Elon Musk, a bunch of others. Now we found out it was over 400,000. I actually went and testified at his sentencing, and I'm the only person that showed up. And part of it is people didn't know. But he got slapped on the wrist. He got 1.
I want to know who's asked to kick.
Now think about it. The left, CNN, all these Democrats are complaining about Elon Musk might having information about your tax returns. Well, we know ProPublica, a left-wing organization, has it. The Biden administration never went after them. Right? This young man got 5 years and only got one count. And put in perspective, Project Veritas got raided by the FBI because they thought they might have Biden's daughter's diary. But ProPublica, a left-wing organization, we know has all this information. Nothing happens to them. And as this continues to leak out, nothing will happen to them, as long as we don't go hold people accountable. It's pretty disappointing. Your federal government, nobody gets fired for doing bad things.
At least one person is dead and several injured after reported car ramming in Germany. Reports say a car rammed into a crowd. Now a major police operation is underway in Mannheim city center. ABC's Lama Hassan is tracking that for us. Lama, what do we know so far?
Yeah, not that much at the moment, Diane, but here's what we know right now. Police are saying that a man driving a car plowed into a crowd of people. So far, at least one person has died. Several injuries are also being reported. Earlier, police posted on X. They said that they were responding to the incident, adding that a major operation is underway. Police have asked the public to stay away from the area downtown and urging them to stay indoors. Diane?
Lama, what do we know about the driver?
Yeah, so not much at the moment, and no word yet on the motive. But what we do know and what police are saying is that the suspect was identified and arrested. We have no motive right now. And of course, this comes with tensions that have already been high in Germany. You'll recall just a few weeks ago, a similar attack in Munich after an Afghan asylum seeker drove his car into people, injuring dozens, as well as killing a mother and her 2-year-old daughter. Now, he was arrested at the scene, and prosecutors say that he has admitted to carrying out the attack, and officials say that he appeared to have a religious motivation. There have been a string of these violent attacks in the last year in Germany that have also been linked to migrants, which is one of the many reasons why in the recent German elections, Diane, that the far right, the AfD party, did so well. One of their main issues they wanted to deal with, as well as one of their main priorities, I should say, of their voters, is immigration and the idea of re-immigration, the idea of deporting people. Diane.
Welcome to Bias Breakdown. I'm your host, Kara Rucker. President Trump has now been in office a little more than a month. How do Americans feel the president is doing? It depends on what poll you look at and what media outlet you listen to, as left-leaning news outlets are largely highlighting negative findings and right-leaning news outlets are largely highlighting positive ones. What polls say about President Trump's approval rating and how the media selectively reports on it. That's the focus of today's Bias Breakdown.
Join Straight Arrow News. See the slant, avoid the bias. When others skew the facts, we give you the truth down the center. Welcome to Bias Breakdown.
First, let's look at how recent polls are being covered, comparing the contrasting narratives between news outlets with a left and right political bias. Then, we'll get into some of the numbers. First, how headlines read from news sources rated as having a left political bias. The Washington Post headline reads, "Many of Trump's early actions are unpopular," post Ipsos poll finds. The Guardian wrote, "Trump begins term with historically low approval rating, polls show." And MSNBC's headline, "Can't stand him. From policy to personnel, Trump scores historically low poll numbers." These headlines highlighting negative findings of several polls, compared to these headlines from news outlets on the right highlighting positive poll findings. Fox News wrote, "Trump has higher approval rating than at any point during his first term." The Blaze wrote, "Trump's agenda continues to be popular, new polling shows." And the Washington Examiner's headline, "Nation happiest ever. Trump is best president, Rasmussen." It can be confusing to read headlines like this from left and right-leaning news outlets contradicting each other. The same contradiction plays out on networks, with left-leaning CNN and MSNBC reporting recent poll numbers are bad for Trump.
It's now been a month since President Trump's return to the White House. New polling shows he may be losing some of the voter enthusiasm he started off with a few weeks ago.
Negative, 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 and then negative. He is underwater in all of these polls. As I said earlier this week, he's a little bit like the Little Mermaid, underwater.
What the data says, sort of broadly, bottom line, is that the country kind of hates this guy. Yeah, I shouldn't say hate. It's not the right word. It's not a nice word. Maybe it's can't stand him.
Compare this rhetoric to what you may have heard listening to right-leaning Fox News.
And meanwhile, a majority of Americans trust Donald Trump and Elon Musk to rein in our federal government. Trump has been regularly polling in the mid-50s. Rasmussen this week had Musk at an approval rating of 55%, and all for good reason.
Democrats have willful blindness here. Has Hakeem Jeffries not seen Trump's approval numbers?
Doing the opposite of what Joe Biden did is now the most popular thing in the country. Voters by wide margins support deportations, DOGE, tariffs, closing the border, and ending DEI. Look at that.
In a prior episode, I mentioned news outlets can pick and choose so-called experts to interview to fit a political narrative. You can find an expert to say one thing and another to say the exact opposite. And that's what you're seeing play out here. These outlets are cherry-picking the polls that better fit their left or right agenda. What they're reporting is factual. They show the data to prove it, but they're selective over what stats to highlight. This is identified by media watchdog organization All Sides as slant, one of these 16 types of media bias. All Sides says slant is a type of media bias that describes when journalists tell only part of a story, or when they highlight, focus on, or play up one particular angle or piece of information. It can include cherry-picking information or data to support one side. Frank Luntz, a pollster and Straight Arrow News contributor, spoke to CNN about how Democrats and Republicans are using recent polls that favor their political side.
Both sides, and there really are two sides to this, have something to cheer about this evening. First, the level of support for Donald Trump has fallen. It is reasonably clear it's been a significant measurement, but the agreement with the general direction of what he's trying to do is positive. So Democrats can point to the fact that the numbers that he's dropped below 50% support, and that's significant. Republicans can point to the fact that he's more popular now than he was at any time in his first term. Democrats can say that the intensity of support behind Trump's measures have dropped, but Republicans can say that the support in general for cutting wasteful spending, for cutting the bureaucracy, for dealing with issues at the border is just as strong, if not stronger.
Just as Democrat and Republican lawmakers are using poll numbers that sound best to them, the left and right media have done the same. Here's some of the polling data. The Washington Post, a left-leaning outlet, cited their Washington Post Ipsos poll consisting of 2,600 U.S. adults. The Post wrote, on specific areas of responsibility, a majority disapprove of how he is handling the economy, 53% versus 45% approving, and a similar majority disapprove of how he is managing the federal government, 54%. On immigration, opinions are closely divided, with 50% approving of how he's handling the issue and 48% disapproving. The president's least popular action is his decision to pardon all those convicted of crimes in the wake of the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. More than 8 in 10 opposed the pardons for those who were convicted of violent crimes. The Post used these statistics to conclude in its headline, many of Trump's early actions are unpopular. The Blaze, a news outlet on the right, cited a Harvard-Harris poll consisting of 2,443 registered voters. The Harris poll found Trump's approval rating is at 52%. On nearly every major issue, the poll found Americans have a favorable view of Trump's agenda by wide margins, such as deportation of illegal immigrants who have committed crimes, 81%, eliminating fraud and waste in government expenditures, 76%, closing the border, 76%, banning men from women's sports, 69%, and having only 2 gender options on government forms, 68%. The Blaze used these statistics to conclude in its headline, Trump's agenda continues to be popular. The Post and The Blaze were both accurate in their reports, even though the conclusions are in contrast of one another. The Post cited a poll that did find Trump's early actions are unpopular, just as The Blaze cited a poll that did find Trump's agenda continues to be popular. Let's give another example. The Guardian, a news outlet on the left, cited a Gallup poll, a sample size of 1,001 adults. The Guardian wrote, Donald Trump is still historically unpopular compared with other new U.S. presidents, a new poll showed. At 47%, President Donald Trump's initial job approval rating for his second term is similar to the inaugural 45% reading during his first term, again placing him below all other elected presidents dating back to 1953. Fox News reported on Trump's approval rating, citing a CNN poll of 1,200 U.S. adults. President Donald Trump's approval rating remains higher than at any point during his first term in office, according to a new poll from CNN. The Thursday poll shows Trump at 47% approval rating with 52% disapproval. So again, two things can be true, citing two different polls. The Gallup poll did find Trump's favorability at a historic low compared to other presidents at this point in his term. And the CNN poll did find Trump is recording his highest favorability ratings than ever before. Polls in general aren't trusted by many people anymore. According to the Brookings Institute, if you took a public opinion poll about polls, the majority would offer an unfavorable view. Not only do people not trust polls, but more than 2/3 of Americans also don't trust the media in covering Trump's second term accurately and fairly. But that statistic also comes from a poll.
But wait, there's more. COVERUP, to me, is a little hard, a little harsh. We were always, from day one, cognizant that age was an issue.
Would you say it was solved?
There are some things that are true. I mean, like the gaslighting. There was a lot of denial of the polling, and I will use the term gaslight because that's what they were doing. The campaign, former colleagues.
That was Jill Biden's ex-press secretary and White House insider Michael LaRosa admitting that the Biden campaign was gaslighting the public with its constant denials that Joe Biden's mental abilities were declining. Now, Cenk, this may come as a surprise to you, but are you shocked to learn that Biden wasn't, in fact, young and dynamic and sharp behind the scenes?
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, first time we're hearing it.
Guys, the important part of this story, as we'll show you some of the tape here, is that they're finally admitting it. And so, I mean, I don't know anyone who was more gaslit on that issue than I was. Because I was like, he's old, he's not going to win. They're like, oh, you're crazy, you're totally nuts, right? So I'll get to that reaction in a second as well. And to me, guys, and we'll talk about this too, will the Democratic voters ever learn a lesson? So please, everybody, listen to what he's saying about how they lied to you and they knew they were lying to you.
And that's the game!
You've disconnected from the hive mind. Explain.